His text popped up claiming he was stuck at his mother's for dinner. I did not reply with words. I replied with a photo, because he was sitting 3 tables ahead of me, holding hands with a woman in a black dress. The best part was not the kiss I witnessed, but the sheer panic on his face when he saw me. I did not come for jealousy. I came to take back everything I owned using the law. My name is Brooklyn Moore, and for the last 15 years, I have made a living out of bringing order to chaos. As a project manager for high-end design and build firms in Cincinnati, my job is to look at a pile of raw materials, steel, glass, concrete, and envision the structure before the first bolt is ever tightened. I am 36 years old, and I pride myself on my ability to spot a hairline fracture in a foundation long before the building starts to lean. I thought I had applied that same rigorous inspection to my marriage, but as I sat in the velvet-upholstered booth of the Halston room, I realized I had missed a catastrophic structural failure. The evening had started with a professional annoyance that morphed into a solitary luxury. A prospective client, a man with more money than manners, had canceled our dinner meeting 10 minutes after we were scheduled to start. I was already seated, a glass of Pinot Noir breathing on the white tablecloth in front of me. Instead of leaving, I decided to stay. I had already mentally spent the $200 on this meal, and I figured I deserved a quiet hour to myself. The restaurant was the kind of place where the lighting was kept intentionally low to flatter the aging clientele, and where the clinking of silverware was muffled by thick carpets. It was intimate, expensive, and, as I would soon discover, a very small world. My phone buzzed against the marble tabletop, vibrating with a cheerful persistence that shattered my momentary peace. I glanced down. It was a text from Caleb. Stuck at Mom's for dinner. Love you. A faint smile touched my lips. Caleb, my husband of 7 years, was a creature of habit, and his mother's pot roast was a gravitational force he rarely resisted. I typed out a quick reply, my thumbs hovering over the screen, ready to tell him to save me some leftovers. But before I hit send, I felt a strange pull, a prickle on the back of my neck that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. It was instinct. It was the same gut feeling I got when a contractor tried to tell me the load-bearing wall was fine when I knew it was not. I lifted my eyes from the glowing screen and looked straight ahead. The restaurant was arranged in tiered levels to give everyone a view of the city skyline, but my view was blocked by a couple sitting 3 tables ahead of me. The man's back was to me, but I knew the slope of those shoulders better than I knew the contours of my own face. I knew the way his hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck when he was overdue for a trim, and I certainly knew the suit. It was a deep navy blue, a bespoke piece we had picked out together for his sister's wedding last year. I knew it because I had spent 20 minutes ironing the jacket that very morning while he showered, making sure the lapels were crisp for his big presentation. Caleb Merritt was not at his mother's house. He was sitting 30 feet away from me, and he was not eating pot roast. He was holding hands. His hand, the one that wore the platinum band I had placed there 7 years ago, was resting on top of a delicate, manicured hand belonging to a woman in a backless black dress. She was leaning in, laughing at something he had said, the candlelight catching the sparkle of diamond earrings that looked far too expensive to be costume jewelry. It was not his mother, unless his mother had undergone a radical de-aging process and developed a taste for plunging necklines. This was a stranger. The world did not stop. The music did not swell. The waiters continued to glide past with trays of oysters and martinis. The only thing that changed was the temperature of my blood, which seemed to drop from warm to freezing in the span of a single heartbeat. I did not gasp. I did not cry. My project manager brain engaged immediately, bypassing the emotional center and going straight to damage control and documentation. Phase 1 assessment. I unlocked my phone again. I deleted the draft I had started. I opened the camera app. The lighting was low, but the lens on my phone was excellent. I zoomed in. The frame on my screen captured the back of Caleb's head, the distinct pattern of his suit fabric, and the side profile of the woman. I waited. Patience is a virtue in construction and in hunting. A moment later, Caleb turned his head slightly to signal a waiter, giving me a perfect 3/4 profile. Click, I took 3 photos in rapid succession, one of the hand-holding, one of his face, one wide shot that included the distinctive interior of the Halston room, just to prove the location. Then, I opened our message thread. His lie was still sitting there, glowing with false innocence. Stuck at Mom's for dinner. Love you. I attached the clearest photo, the one where he looked particularly enamored with the woman's fingers. I did not scream in all caps. I did not demand an explanation. I typed a single line, precise and devastating. Enjoy dinner with Mom. I hit send. I watched him. It takes about 5 seconds for a text message to travel through the network and land on a device sitting 3 tables away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Caleb's phone lit up on the table. He glanced down casually, probably expecting my standard, "Okay, honey, drive safe" response. I saw his spine stiffen. It was a physical recoil, as if the phone had burned him. He picked it up, bringing it closer to his face, squinting as if the pixels might rearrange themselves into something less damning if he stared hard enough. Then, the color drained from his face so completely that even in the dim light, he looked like a ghost. He dropped the phone onto the table with a clatter that made the woman jump. He did not look at the woman. He spun in his seat, his eyes wild, scanning the room. He was looking for the sniper. He was looking for the vantage point. He was frantic, his head whipping left and right, searching the shadows. I did not hide. I sat perfectly still, my posture impeccable. I picked up my wine glass by the stem, swirling the dark red liquid gently. His eyes swept over the room, and then, inevitably, they locked onto mine. For a second, he just stared, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock. The horror in his eyes was absolute. He saw me, calm and composed, watching him implode. I raised my glass in a silent toast, a gesture that was both a greeting and a goodbye. He scrambled to stand up, his chair scraping loudly against the floorboards, drawing the attention of the diners around them. "Brooklyn," he mouthed. Or maybe he shouted it, but the sound was lost in the rush of blood in my ears. He stumbled slightly, tangling his foot in the chair leg. I did not wait for him to regain his balance. I did not want a scene. I wanted victory, and victory requires a clean exit. I had already placed 3 $100 bills on the table, far more than the wine cost, but I was not waiting for change. I stood up, smoothing the front of my dress. As I turned to walk toward the exit, I had to pass within 10 feet of their table. Caleb was struggling to get past the waiter who had just arrived with their appetizers. The woman in the black dress was looking up at him, confused and alarmed by his sudden panic. And then, I heard it, the final nail in the coffin of my marriage, delivered in a voice that was soft and genuinely perplexed. "Caleb, what is wrong?" the woman asked, reaching for his arm. "You said she was on a business trip." I did not stop. I did not look back. I walked out into the cool Cincinnati night, leaving my husband standing in the wreckage of his own lies, 3 tables away from redemption. He thought he was playing a game, but he had just made his move against a woman who builds skyscrapers for a living. He had no idea that I had already begun the demolition. I did not turn my car toward the suburbs. Driving home would mean walking into a crime scene, a place now contaminated by the realization that the person I shared it with was a stranger. Instead, I drove 3 miles toward the city center and pulled into the underground garage of the Ridgeway Hotel. It was a standard business hotel, the kind with stiff sheets and generic abstract art, but tonight it offered the one amenity I needed most: neutrality. My phone had been vibrating incessantly against the passenger seat for the entire drive. It buzzed like an angry insect, demanding attention. Caleb. It was always Caleb. I did not look at the screen until I was safely behind the double-locked door of room 412. I sat on the edge of the bed, the room illuminated only by the cold blue light of the device. 32 missed calls, 14 text messages. The texts ranged from feigned confusion, "Where did you go?" to panic. "It is not what it looks like," to gaslighting, "You are overreacting. Let's talk." I did not reply. Engagement is for negotiation. And we were past the point of negotiation. We were now in the phase of documentation. I took screenshots of every single missed call log and every desperate text message. I captured the timestamps, ensuring the sequence of his panic was preserved. Once the digital record was secure, I did not throw the phone against the wall. However much my shaking hands wanted to, I simply powered it down. Silence filled the room, heavy and absolute. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed to life, a familiar comfort. In my line of work, when a project goes off the rails, you do not sit around weeping over spilled concrete. You pull the files, you check the specs, and you find exactly where the structural integrity failed. I created a new folder on my desktop. I did not name it Heartbreak or Caleb. I named it Evidence. Inside, I created a subfolder labeled with today's date. I uploaded the photos from the restaurant, the clasped hands, the side profile of his face, the woman in the black dress, the wide shot of the Halston room. I opened a blank document and began to type. I wrote down the time of the text he sent me about his mother. I wrote down the time I took the photo. I transcribed the brief sentence the woman had said about me being on a business trip. My fingers moved rhythmically across the keyboard. There were no tears. I felt a strange, icy clarity, a detachment that allowed me to view my life as if it were someone else's failing project. Crying blurs your vision, and I needed to see everything in high definition. Next, I opened a new tab and navigated to our bank's website. We had a joint checking account for household expenses and shared savings, a system we had established 6 months after the wedding. I had always been the one to manage the larger investments, but Caleb handled the day-to-day transaction monitoring. I trusted him. That was the variable I had failed to account for in my calculations. I downloaded the statements for the last 24 months. I started with the most recent. The patterns emerged almost immediately. It was not a single slip-up. It was a systemic siphoning of resources. I saw charges for the Golden Oak, a steakhouse across town, on a Tuesday night 3 weeks ago. Caleb had told me he was working late on the Quartermain account. $240. That was a lot of overtime takeout. I scrolled back further. There were charges at a boutique hotel in Columbus from 2 months ago. I remembered that weekend. He had claimed he was going to a bachelor party for a college friend named Mark. I checked the transaction details. The hotel bill included room service for 2 breakfasts. I opened a spreadsheet and began to log every suspicious line item: date, location, amount, his alibi. February 14th, a charge for a florist I had never heard of. I had received no flowers on Valentine's Day because we had agreed to save money for the kitchen renovation. March 3rd, a jewelry store called Gilded Lily, $300. I touched my neck, feeling the absence of any necklace. Then I found something that made my stomach turn, not out of sadness, but out of sheer disgust at the sloppiness of his lies. Last month, he had gone to a marketing seminar in Chicago for the weekend. I saw a charge for a dinner in downtown Cincinnati on that Saturday night. The description read, "Client dinner reimbursement," in the memo line he had added himself via the banking app, but the geolocation tag on the transaction was for a bistro 10 minutes from our house. He had not even left the city. He had stayed local, likely with her, while I sat at home texting him goodnight and hoping his flight had been smooth. I highlighted the row and read. By 2 a.m, my eyes were burning, but the spreadsheet was full. Thousands of dollars. Months of deception. I looked at the total sum at the bottom of the column. It was enough to pay for the high-end appliances we had been looking at for the remodel. He had not just cheated on me emotionally and physically. He had stolen from our future to pay for it. I closed the browser and opened my work email. I drafted a message to my director. Personal emergency. Will be out for 48 hours. Project timelines are stable. I hit send. I needed 2 days. 1 day to grieve. Perhaps, but 1 day to fortify my position. I walked into the hotel bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. My face was pale, my eyes hard. I washed my face with cold water. A thought tried to creep in, the insidious voice of self-doubt that plagues every person in this situation. How could you be so stupid? How did you not see this? I shut it down instantly. I looked my reflection in the eye and spoke to the empty room. Trusting someone does not make you stupid. Betraying that trust is what makes a person dirty. I was about to close the laptop and try to sleep when I decided to check one last thing: the savings account. It was the fund we kept for the house taxes, major repairs, the renovation budget. I scanned the recent activity. Most of it was normal: automatic transfers in, interest payments. But there was a pending transaction from 3 days ago that caught my eye. It was not a withdrawal, it was a hold. A small fee of $500 payable to Apex Residential Appraisals. I froze. Why would we need an appraisal? We were not selling. We had not discussed refinancing. An appraisal is what you get when you want to know how much equity you can pull out of a property, or how much it is worth on the market. I clicked on the transaction for more details. The reference number was linked to an inquiry for a home equity line of credit. My breath hitched. He was not just spending our cash. Caleb was making moves to leverage the house. My house. The house I had redesigned from the studs up. The house where I had handpicked the tiling and personally sanded the banister. He was preparing to borrow against our home, likely to fund a new life or cover the debts he was racking up with the woman in the black dress. I added the screenshot to the evidence folder. This was no longer just a divorce. This was a hostile takeover, and I had just caught the enemy trying to breach the perimeter before the war had even officially been declared. I shut the laptop with a snap that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. Sleep would not come tonight, but that was fine. I did not need sleep. I needed a lawyer. The sign on the frosted glass door read, "Locke Vance, Family Law." But the atmosphere inside the office felt less like a place for families and more like a war room. Marianne Locke did not offer me coffee or sympathy. She offered me a seat across from a desk that was wide enough to land a small aircraft on. She was a woman in her late 50s with silver hair cut in a sharp bob that looked like it could slice paper, and she wore a tailored gray suit that screamed billable hours. I did not waste time. I placed my laptop on her desk and opened the file. "I am not here to save my marriage," I said, my voice steady. "I am here to terminate it, and I am here to make sure my husband does not walk away with the assets I built while he was busy spending our savings on someone else." Marianne looked at me over the rim of her glasses. She scrolled through the spreadsheet I had compiled the night before the dates, the suspicious charges, the photos from the restaurant. She paused at the photograph of Caleb holding hands with the woman in the black dress. "Clean," she noted, her tone professional. "Most clients come in here with a gut feeling and a lot of tears. You came with a dossier. That is good. Now, tell me about the money." I walked her through the transactions. The dinners, the hotels, the gifts. I estimated the total misappropriation of marital funds to be nearly $15,000 over the last 6 months alone. Marianne listened, taking notes with a fountain pen that scratched aggressively against her legal pad. "We are going to stop the bleeding immediately," Marianne said, leaning forward. "Here is your checklist for the next 2 hours. 1. You go to a bank where you do not currently hold an account. You open a checking account in your name only. 2. You contact your HR department. Your direct deposit needs to be rerouted to that new account effective immediately, not next week. Today." I nodded, mentally adding these tasks to my internal project schedule. 3, she continued, holding up 3 fingers. "You revoke all authorized user privileges on your credit cards if he has any cards attached to your primary account. And 4, we request full statements for all accounts for the last 24 months. If he has been spending this boldly for 6 months, he has likely been testing the waters for 2 years. I want the money back," I said. "Every cent he spent on her. Is that possible?" "We will call it dissipation of marital assets," Marianne explained. "We can argue that this spending did not benefit the marriage and should come out of his share of the final settlement. Essentially, we make him pay himself back with his own half of the pie." She paused, her eyes narrowing. "But you need to be prepared for the counterattack. Caleb is going to realize very quickly that his cash flow has been cut off. He will panic. Then he will perform." "Perform?" I asked. He will cycle through 3 stages, Marianne said, ticking them off on her fingers. Apology, blame, and gaslighting. He will try to rewrite history. He will tell you that you were distant, that he was lonely, or that you are crazy in imagining the extent of this. He will try to control the narrative before you do. Do not engage. Do not argue. Redirect all communication to me. I left her office with a retainer agreement signed and a battle plan in hand. The sun was shining on the Cincinnati streets, a jarring contrast to the demolition taking place in my life. I sat in my car and made 2 phone calls. The first was to my brother, Ethan. Ethan was a structural engineer, a man who solved problems with math and brute force. When I told him, there was a silence on the line so heavy I thought the call had dropped. "I am coming over there," Ethan said, his voice low and dangerous. "I am going to put him through a wall. You will do no such thing," I ordered, channeling every ounce of my project manager authority. "If you touch him, he presses charges. If he presses charges, he gets leverage. I need you to be smart, not strong. I need you to help me move some things into storage, and I need you to keep your mouth shut." Ethan grumbled, but he agreed. The second call was to Juno. Juno had been my best friend since college, a PR specialist who could spin a hurricane into a refreshing breeze. She gasped so loud, I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "I am going to destroy him on social media," she declared instantly. "I have pictures of his bad haircut from 2019. I will ruin his reputation in this city." "Juno, stop," I said. "No posts, no vague statuses about betrayal, no liking sad quotes on Instagram. We are going dark. If he thinks I am purely emotional, he will underestimate me. I need him to think I am broken so he does not see the legal sniper scope aimed at his chest." "Fine," she breathed, though I could hear the frustration in her voice. "But when the ink is dry, I am burning him down." I spent the rest of the afternoon executing Marianne's orders. I opened a new account at a credit union across town. I sat in a rental storage unit 3 miles from our house, surrounded by boxes of personal files I had removed from our home office while Caleb was at work. I was building a physical timeline on the floor of the storage unit. I laid out the credit card statements like a map. I cross-referenced them with Caleb's calendar, which I still had access to on my phone. May 12th. Caleb's calendar said, "Marketing Conference, Chicago." The credit card statement showed a charge for a steakhouse in downtown Cincinnati and a transaction at a local liquor store. June 8th. Caleb's calendar said, "Mom's birthday dinner." I remembered that night. He had come home late, smelling of expensive cologne. I looked at the statement, a charge for 2 tickets to the symphony. Caleb hated classical music. His mother was deaf in one ear and disliked crowds. I felt a cold rage settling in my chest. It was not just the cheating, it was the insult to my intelligence. He had not even tried hard to hide it. He just assumed I trusted him too much to check. My phone rang. It was Marianne. "I have been digging through the initial financial overview you gave me," she said, her voice brisk, "and I found something troubling regarding the house." "The appraisal fee?" I asked. "I saw the $500 to Apex Residential." "It is worse than just an inquiry," Marianne said. "I have a contact at the bank who owed me a favor. I cannot get the full file yet without a subpoena, but I can see the metadata on the application linked to your address. Caleb did not just ask for an appraisal. He initiated an application for a home equity line of credit 2 weeks ago." I gripped the phone tighter. "A HELOC for how much?" "He was trying to access $80,000 of the equity," she said. "And here's the kicker. He listed himself as the primary borrower, but he checked the box claiming he had spousal consent. He was likely planning to forge your signature on the final documents or charm you into signing something you did not read carefully." $80,000, I whispered. "That was nearly half our equity." "If that loan had gone through and you two divorced," Marianne continued, "you would be on the hook for half that debt, and he would have likely siphoned the cash into an offshore account or spent it. He was trying to cash out his half of the house before he left you. Brooklyn. He was literally planning to sell the roof over your head while you were sleeping under it." I looked at the concrete floor of the storage unit. The sadness was gone, completely evaporated. In its place was a resolve as hard as steel. "Stop it," I said. "Can we stop it?" "We can file an emergency motion to freeze assets," Marianne said. "But we need to move fast. He is going to know we know very soon." "Do it," I said. "Freeze everything. If he wants a war, let's see how he fights when he can't buy his ammunition." Grant Heller did not look like the detectives in the movies. He did not wear a trench coat, and he did not smoke in the shadows. He looked like a retired high school geography teacher balding, wearing a beige windbreaker, and possessing a face so forgettable that you would struggle to describe him 5 minutes after he left the room. That, I realized, was exactly why he had been successful for 20 years. We met in his car, a nondescript sedan parked in the back lot of a home improvement store. It was the kind of place where contractors like me spent hours, so my presence there would raise no red flags if Caleb happened to track my location. "I do not need you to rough him up, and I do not need you to scare him," I told Grant, handing him a flash drive containing the photos from the restaurant and a list of Caleb's known associates. "I want the truth. I want a timeline so watertight that when I walk into a courtroom, the judge does not even have to ask a question. I want facts." Grant nodded, taking the drive. "You want the leverage package, standard surveillance. I will start at his office." For the next 3 days, I went to work as if nothing was wrong. I reviewed blueprints. I yelled at vendors about delayed steel shipments, and I came home to the rental apartment I had quietly secured. Every evening, Grant sent me a secure link to a cloud folder. It was like watching a documentary of my husband's secret life, narrated by timestamps and GPS coordinates. The first update came on Tuesday. Grant had picked up Caleb's trail, leaving the Brightline Strategies building at 5 in the evening. Caleb did not go to the gym as he had told me he would. Instead, he walked 2 blocks to a parking garage where he waited in his car for 10 minutes. At 5:15, a woman opened the passenger door and slid inside. I clicked on the high-resolution photo Grant had uploaded. It was her, the woman from the Halston room. But this time, she was not wearing a cocktail dress. She was wearing business casual attire, a gray blazer and a pencil skirt. She looked comfortable, tossing her bag into the back seat with the ease of someone who had done this 100 times before. Grant's report was concise. Subject B, identified as Leona Ward, 32 years old. Employment sales lead at Brightline Strategies. Subject A, Caleb, and Subject B work on the same floor. I sat back in my chair. She was not just a random fling. She was a colleague. They were playing house in the office, sneaking glances across cubicles and touching knees under conference tables. It made the betrayal feel more claustrophobic. My husband wasn't just lying to me. He was lying to his employer, creating a toxic web of unprofessionalism that could implode at any moment. The folder filled up quickly over the next 48 hours. Grant was relentless. Wednesday, 6 o'clock. Caleb's car parked at an apartment complex on the north side of town. The lease was in Lena's name. Grant captured a photo of them walking in, Caleb's hand resting possessively on the small of her back. They emerged 2 hours later, hair slightly disheveled, looking flushed. Thursday, 7:30, a quiet bar called The Library. Located in a suburb where neither of them lived, they sat in a corner booth. Grant had managed to get a shot through the window. They were not just drinking, they were plotting. There were papers on the table. Caleb looked intense, almost desperate, while Leona looked soothing, patting his hand. But the photo that made my blood run cold was a close-up Grant had taken of Leona while she was smoking a cigarette outside the bar, while Caleb was inside paying the tab. She was holding the cigarette with her left hand. On her ring finger, catching the street lamp's light, was a gold band nested next to a modest diamond solitaire. I zoomed in until the image pixelated. It was a wedding set. Leona Ward was married. I felt a wave of nausea, followed immediately by a surge of adrenaline. This was not a tragedy of two lonely hearts finding each other. This was a demolition derby. Two people were willingly destroying two families. I opened a new note on my laptop and typed, "Two traitors. Multiplied collateral damage. If Lena was married, there was another victim out there. Another person sitting at home, wondering why their spouse was working late, why the affection had dried up, why the money was tight. Then came the final report for the week, the one that shifted my strategy from simple divorce to corporate warfare. Grant called me on Friday afternoon. "Mrs. Moore, I just uploaded a video file and a receipt image. You need to look at it now." I opened the file. The video showed Caleb and Lena at a lunch spot near their office earlier that day. It was an upscale bistro, not a cafeteria. They were laughing, sharing a dessert. When the check came, Caleb pulled out a card. It wasn't his personal debit card, and it wasn't the joint credit card I had been monitoring. It was a silver card with a distinct blue logo. I recognized it immediately because I had seen it in his wallet 1,000 times. It was his Brightline Strategies corporate expense card. Grant's voice on the phone was dry. I managed to get close enough to hear him tell the waiter to print a second copy of the receipt. He wrote something on the back of it before he put it in his wallet. I used a long-range lens to catch the writing when he held it up. I opened the second image. It was a grainy but legible shot of the receipt. On the back, in Caleb's handwriting, he had written "Client Lunch, Quartermain Project Consultation." My breath hitched. He wasn't just cheating on me. He was funding his affair on the company dime. He was categorizing romantic dates with his mistress, who was also an employee, as client meetings. "He is embezzling," I said, the realization settling over me like a heavy blanket. "Technically, he is stealing from Brightline to date Brightline's own sales lead." "It gets deeper," Grant said. "I ran a quick check on the dates of the business trips you gave me against the local hotel logs. On 3 occasions where he claimed to be out of state for client acquisition, his corporate card was swiped at local hotels here in Cincinnati. He is falsifying expense reports to cover local hotel rooms for him and Mrs. Ward." I closed my eyes. Caleb had always been arrogant, but I never thought he was reckless. He was risking felony fraud charges for a few nights in a hotel room. "Keep the file open, Grant," I said, my voice cold. "We have enough to divorce him. Now I have enough to bury him." I hung up. I looked at the picture of Lena Ward's wedding ring again. The two of them were not just breaking vows. They were breaking the law and violating corporate policy in a way that would leave them unemployable. They had built a glass house on a foundation of dynamite, and they had just handed me the match. The file Grant placed on my desk contained the life of a stranger who was about to become the most important person in my world. His name was Marcus Ward. He was 34 years old, an independent accountant who worked from a home office in the quiet suburb of Anderson. His routine was clockwork gym at 6 in the morning, work until 5, grocery shopping on Tuesdays and Fridays. He was the kind of man who likely paid his bills the day they arrived and never forgot an anniversary. In short, he was the stable foundation upon which Lena Ward was building her secret life of chaos. I stared at his photo. He had a kind face, the sort that smiled easily in pictures, unaware that the camera was capturing a man living in a fool's paradise. I debated the morality of what I was about to do for exactly 3 minutes. Was I destroying his peace? No. Lena had already done that. I was merely turning on the light so he could see the mess. I drafted the email with the precision of a contract addendum. The subject line was neutral, information regarding your wife. Lena, the body text was sparse. Mr. Ward, I believe my husband and your wife are involved in a relationship that goes beyond professional boundaries. I have evidence. If you wish to speak, I am available. I attached 3 photos, one of them holding hands at the Halston room, one of the kiss outside the hotel, and one of Lena smoking outside the bar. Her wedding ring catching the light, while Caleb paid the tab inside. I hit send. I expected a delay. Denial usually takes time to process. But the response came within 12 minutes. It was frantic and brief. "Starbucks on 4th and Vine, 30 minutes. Please, I arrived 5 minutes early." But Marcus was already there. He was sitting at a small table in the back, away from the windows. He looked nothing like the smiling man in the file. He looked like a building that had been gutted by fire. the exterior walls still standing but the inside hollowed out. His dress shirt was wrinkled, and there were dark, bruised circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. His hands were wrapped around a paper coffee cup, and they were trembling so violently that a small amount of dark liquid had sloshed onto the lid. I approached the table. "Marcus." He looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed. "You are Brooklyn," he said. It was not a question. "You are the one in the pictures." I sat down opposite him. I did not offer platitudes. "I am sorry we had to meet like this." "Is it true?" he asked, his voice cracking. "I mean, I saw the pictures you sent, but is it over or is it still happening?" "It is still happening," I said gently. "They are currently under the impression that they have successfully deceived us both." Marcus let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. He ran a hand through his hair. "I knew it. God help me. I knew it for months." She changed the passcode on her phone. She started taking these long showers with the bathroom door locked, and the trips, the constant seminars. "They were not seminars," I said, placing a manila envelope on the table. "Here is the timeline. My investigator tracked them. Every time she told you she was at a conference, she was with Caleb, sometimes in Chicago, but mostly right here in the city, charging hotels to their company expense accounts." Marcus took the envelope, but he did not open it. He just stared at the clasp. "I asked her, 2 weeks ago, I asked her if there was someone else. She looked me right in the eye and told me I was paranoid. She said I was suffocating her with my jealousy. She made me feel like I was the villain for even thinking it." "That is the script," I said, recognizing the tactic immediately. Caleb had done the exact same thing when I questioned the late nights. They attack your reality so you stop trusting your own instincts. It is psychological warfare. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to steady his hands. "She told me things were going to get better. She said we were just going through a rough patch financially, but that soon we would be flush. She said—" He paused, frowning as he recalled the memory. "She said Caleb, she called him her boss, was going to secure a large sum of money soon that would cover her bonus structure. She made it sound like a windfall." My internal alarm bells began to ring. "A large sum, did she give a number?" "No number," Marcus said. "But she said he was liquidating some assets to invest in the team, that he was moving money around to make things happen." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Liquidating assets, the HELOC, the $80,000 he tried to pull out of our house. He wasn't just stealing for dinners. He was trying to fund a new life with Leona using my equity. "Marcus," I said, leaning in, "we need to handle this carefully. I am filing for divorce. I have a lawyer, and we are moving to freeze assets. But you need to protect yourself too. And more importantly, we have leverage regarding their employment. They are embezzling company funds to conduct this affair." Marcus nodded slowly, the accountant in him waking up, pushing through the heartbreak. "If they are fired," he said, "they lose their income. In a divorce, that affects alimony and child support calculations." "We do not need them fired yet," I corrected. "We need them exposed. We need the threat of exposure to ensure they sign what we want them to sign. We are the ones holding the detonator." Marcus reached into his messenger bag. "I have something for you too. I did not know who Caleb was until you emailed me, but I knew she was talking to someone. Last night, she left her laptop open on the kitchen counter. I took a picture of an email draft she was writing to him. I did not understand it at the time, but after what you just said about assets, I think it is for you." He slid his phone across the table. On the screen was a photo of a Gmail window. The email was from Leona to Caleb. It read, "My love, do not worry about the house. If the bank allows the transfer of the deed liability like you said, you can shift the primary debt into her name before the filing goes through. Just make sure the appraisal comes in low so the equity looks smaller. Once the papers are signed, we are free." I stared at the screen, the text blurring slightly as my rage focused into a singular burning point. This was not just betrayal. This was a conspiracy. Caleb wasn't just trying to take half. He was actively plotting with his mistress to defraud me, to devalue our home artificially. and to saddle me with the entirety of the mortgage debt while he walked away with the cash from the loan he tried to take out. I looked up at Marcus. His face was pale, but his eyes were steady now. He realized he was looking at a crime scene, not just a romance. "Send that to me," I said, my voice low and terrifyingly calm. "Send it to me right now." "I already did," Marcus whispered. "Good," I said, standing up. "Go home. Do not confront her yet. Act normal. Let them think they are winning for 2 more days, because when we strike, I want them to be looking the other way." I walked out of the coffee shop. The sun was still shining, but the world looked different. They wanted a war. They wanted to play games with numbers and contracts. They had forgotten who they were dealing with. I don't just read contracts. I enforce them. And they had just violated the most important clause of all. Marianne Locke had given me strict instructions regarding the meeting. Do not meet in private. Do not meet at the house. Do not drink alcohol. And, most importantly, record everything. Since Ohio is a one-party consent state, I did not need Caleb's permission to document his lies. I just needed to be part of the conversation. I chose a coffee shop in Over the Rhine, a bustling neighborhood where anonymity was guaranteed by the sheer volume of hipsters and tourists. I arrived 10 minutes early to secure a table outside on the patio, positioned so that the security camera of the establishment was pointed directly at us. I placed my phone face down on the table, the voice memo app already running, catching the ambient noise of traffic and chatter. Caleb arrived exactly on time. He looked like a man who had curated his distress. His tie was loosened, his top button undone, and he wore the same suit he had worn to work the day before, implying he had not slept or changed. It was a performance. I knew his wardrobe. He had fresh shirts in his gym bag. He wanted to look broken. He approached the table, his eyes wet with unshed tears, and reached for my hand. I pulled back as if he were radioactive. "Sit down," I said. My voice was not loud, but it had the finality of a gavel striking wood. "You have 30 minutes, then I am leaving, and the next time you hear from me, it will be through a process server." Caleb sank into the metal chair, looking wounded by my recoil. "Brooklyn, please, you have to listen to me. It is not what you think. The picture, it was a moment of weakness. It meant nothing. A moment of weakness is eating a second slice of cake." "Caleb," I said, checking the time on my watch. "A moment of weakness is not a 6-month affair with a subordinate, funded by company money, involving fake business trips and coordinated deception. Do not insult me. I know who Lena is." He flinched at her name, the color drained from his face, replaced by a flash of anger that he quickly suppressed. He ran a hand over his face. Okay, you know, but you do not know why. You have been so busy lately. Brooklyn, the projects, the late nights, the constant travel to job sites. I was alone in that house. I felt like a roommate, not a husband. I was lonely, and she was there, and she listened to me." He looked up, expecting sympathy, expecting me to take on the burden of his guilt. "Stop," I said. I leaned forward, keeping my voice low so the table next to us would not hear, though I wanted the microphone to catch every syllable. "Loneliness is not a license to betray. I was working late to pay for the renovation you wanted. I was traveling to secure the contracts that pay for your lifestyle. If you were lonely, you could have bought a dog. You could have joined a club. You could have talked to your wife. Instead, you chose to sleep with a married woman and lie to my face every single day." "I made a mistake," he hissed, his volume rising. "I am human. Can't you forgive a mistake? Cheating is a choice, not a mistake," I corrected him. "Embezzling marital funds to pay for hotel rooms is a choice. Attempting to refinance our home without my knowledge is a choice." I watched his eyes. This was the test. I needed to see how he would react to the house accusation. "Refinance," he stammered, his gaze shifting to the side. "I do not know what you are talking about." I saw the inquiry. "Caleb, Apex Residential Appraisals, $500. He licked his lips. That was just research. I was just checking the market rates. I thought maybe we could lower our monthly payments. Surprise you with some extra cash flow. I never signed anything. You filed an application for a home equity line of credit, I stated, stating the fact as if I were reading a blueprint. You tried to pull $80,000 of equity out of the house. Why to pay off debt or to fund a getaway? I was doing it for us, he lied, the desperation making his voice shrill. I wanted to surprise you. You certainly did, I said. And now, here is my surprise. I am filing for divorce. I am seeking full restitution for the funds you dissipated. I am selling the house, and I have instructed my lawyer to ensure you do not touch a single cent of the equity until the court decides what you owe me. Caleb stared at me. The mask of the sorrowful, repentant husband vanished. In its place was the face of the man I had seen in the restaurant, the panic, the calculation, and now, the malice. You cannot do that, he said, his voice dropping to a growl. That is my house, too. It is our asset, I corrected, and you tried to defraud it. That changes the math. I stood up. Your 30 minutes are up. Do not come to the apartment. Do not call me. Marianne Locke will be in touch regarding the mediation schedule. We are going to settle this, and you are going to agree to my terms, or I will take this to trial, and I will make every single receipt public record. Caleb stood up too, knocking his chair back. He leaned over the table, invading my personal space. You think you can just discard me? You think you are the saint here. You are cold. Brooklyn, you have always been cold. If you try to ruin me, I will make sure you lose everything. I will drag this out until you are bankrupt. I looked at him, feeling absolutely nothing. No love, no hate, just a profound sense of waste. You have already done your worst. Caleb, you have nothing left to threaten me with. I picked up my phone, stopped the recording, and saved the file. I turned to walk away. You think you are so smart, he called out after me. I paused. He was smiling now, a nasty, twisted smile that did not reach his eyes. You think you are the detective here? You think you are the only one who can hire people to watch people? I froze. The ambient noise of the street seemed to fade away. What? I asked, turning back slowly. You think you are the only one being watched? Caleb sneered, adjusting his jacket. I have my own insurance policy. Brooklyn, I know where you go. I know who you talk to. I know about your little meetings with that accountant husband of hers. You want to play the surveillance game we can play. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd, leaving me standing on the sidewalk with a chill running down my spine that the warm afternoon sun could not touch. I got into my car and locked the doors immediately. My hands were steady as I started the engine, but my mind was racing. He knew about Marcus. That meant he had been having me followed, or Lena had been watching Marcus and saw us. I called Marianne immediately. He threatened me, I said as soon as she answered, and he knows about Marcus. He says he has been having me watched. Stay calm, Marianne said, her voice anchoring me. This is a tactic. He's trying to scare you into backing down. If he had real dirt, he would have used it by now. He is flailing, but we need to move the timeline up. I am scheduling the mediation for this Friday. We are not giving him time to manufacture evidence or intimidate you further. We are going to get him in a room, under oath, and we are going to finish this. Friday, I repeated. Can we be ready by Friday? With what you have given me, Marianne let out a short, dry laugh. Brooklyn, by Friday. We will not just be ready, we will be lethal. I hung up and drove toward the rental. I checked my rearview mirror constantly, scanning for cars that stayed behind me, one turn too many. I was not afraid. I was focused. Caleb thought telling me I was being watched would make me paranoid. He was wrong. It only made me more careful, and a careful project manager never misses a detail. The conference room at Locke Vance was designed to intimidate. The table was a slab of polished mahogany that seemed to stretch for miles, and the floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the Cincinnati skyline that made human problems feel insignificant. I sat on one side, my back to the view, with Marianne Locke beside me. On the other side sat Caleb and his attorney, a man named Arthur Sterling, who wore a suit that cost more than my first car and an expression of permanent fatigue. This was not a court hearing. This was mediation. It was a civilized way to dismantle a life, a game of chess played with bank statements and dignity. Marianne opened the proceedings not with a speech, but with a binder. It was 3 inches thick, bound in black plastic. She slid it across the mahogany surface until it came to a stop directly in front of Arthur. "We are not here to debate the breakdown of the marriage," Marianne said, her voice smooth and dangerous. "The infidelity is documented and indisputable. We are here to discuss the dissipation of marital assets. My client is requesting full restitution for $15,400 spent on non-marital activities over the last 6 months, to be deducted from Mr. Merritt's share of the final settlement." Arthur opened the binder. The first page was the spreadsheet I had created, followed by the receipts Grant had uncovered. The dinners, the hotels, the jewelry. Caleb shifted in his chair. He looked smaller than he usually did. He tried to catch my eye, perhaps looking for the softness he had exploited for 7 years. But I was studying the grain of the wood on the table. I had decided before walking in that I would not speak unless absolutely necessary. I was the client. Marianne was the weapon. $15,000, Arthur asked, raising an eyebrow. He glanced at Caleb. "You told me the spending was incidental." "It adds up," Marianne said, tapping a specific tab in the binder. "Especially the weekend at the Breathless Resort in May. Mr. Merritt claimed to be at a seminar. The credit card bill shows a suite for 2 and a spa package. Mrs. Moore was not in attendance." Caleb cleared his throat. I can explain that." "There is no need," I said. It was the first time I had spoken. My voice was low, flat, and devoid of tremor. "I do not want an explanation. Caleb, I want my money back." Arthur closed the binder. "We can discuss a partial reimbursement, but let us move to the primary asset. The house in Hyde Park? We want it sold," Marianne stated immediately. "Market value? Proceeds split 50-50, minus the restitution debt." "Caleb wants to keep the house," Arthur countered. "He is willing to buy out Mrs. Moore's equity share over a 5-year period." "Absolutely not," Marianne said. "We want a clean break. And frankly, given Mr. Merritt's recent financial maneuvers, we do not trust his ability to secure financing that does not put my client at risk." Caleb slammed his hand on the table. "I have excellent credit. I can refinance the mortgage in my name alone." Marianne smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator who sees a limb hanging out of the boat. She pulled a single sheet of paper from her file and placed it on top of the binder. "Is that why you attempted to open a home equity line of credit for $80,000 2 weeks ago without your wife's consent?" she asked. The room went silent. Arthur turned his head slowly to look at his client. The look on the lawyer's face was one of pure exasperation. He clearly did not know about the HELOC application. "I didn't take the money," Caleb stammered, his face flushing a deep, blotchy red. "I just asked." "You checked the box for spousal consent," Marianne said. "That is fraud. Mr. Merritt, if we were to take this to a judge instead of settling here today, that document alone would be enough to destroy your credibility regarding financial stewardship. We are not accepting a buyout. The house goes on the market immediately, and we want an injunction preventing you from encumbering the property with any further debt until the sale closes." Arthur rubbed his temples. He whispered something to Caleb, harsh and quick. Caleb looked down at his lap, nodding like a scolded child. "Fine," Arthur said, looking back at us. "We agree to sell the house. We agree to the injunction." I nodded once, a single, sharp dip of my chin. "Good." "Now," Marianne said, leaning back in her chair, "there is one final matter. The manner in which the infidelity was funded." Caleb looked up, wary. "You already asked for the money back. I said I would pay it." "It is not just about the amount," Marianne said. She pulled out a photograph, the one Grant had taken of the receipt with the handwritten note about the client lunch. It is about the source. We have reason to believe that a significant portion of these illicit expenses were charged to Mr. Merritt's corporate card at Brightline Strategies. He was disguising personal trysts as client development. Caleb went white. It was a different kind of fear than before. The fear of losing a wife is one thing. The fear of losing a career is another. That is private, Caleb choked out. That has nothing to do with the divorce. It has everything to do with income stability, Marianne countered. If we go to trial, these receipts become exhibits. Exhibits become public record. If Brightline Strategies were to subpoena the court records for any reason, or if the transcripts were to become accessible. She let the sentence hang in the air. This was the ace. We were not blackmailing him. We were simply pointing out the inevitable consequence of a messy fight. If he fought us on the assets, we would have to prove his spending in court. Proving his spending meant exposing his embezzlement. Arthur looked at the receipt. He saw the danger immediately. He closed his eyes for a second, calculating the damage. What do you want? We want the settlement signed today, Marianne said. Full asking price on the restitution, immediate listing of the house, 60-40 split of the remaining assets in favor of Mrs. Moore to account for emotional distress and financial misconduct, and Mr. Merritt covers Mrs. Moore's legal fees. 60-40 is unreasonable, Arthur started, but Caleb grabbed his arm. Do it, Caleb whispered. His eyes were wide, terrified. Just do it. Caleb, we can negotiate the percentage, Arthur argued. I said do it, Caleb hissed. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. I will sign, I will give you the 60%, I will pay the fees, just the company stuff, the receipts. They stay out of the court record. We settle this privately, please. I looked at him. I saw the man I had married, the man who had promised to protect me, now begging me to protect him from his own greed. I looked at Marianne and gave a slow, deliberate nod. If the agreement is signed today, Marianne said, there is no need for a public trial. The exhibits remain in my private files. Caleb grabbed the pen before Arthur could even slide the papers toward him. He signed the stipulation with a shaking hand. He was signing away tens of thousands of dollars, his home, and his pride, all to keep his secret from his employer. It is done, he said, pushing the paper back. He looked at me, and for a moment, he looked almost relieved. You got what you wanted, Brooklyn. You got the money. Now leave Brightline out of it. Promise me you will not send this to them. I stood up. Smoothing my skirt, I picked up my purse. The settlement is signed. Caleb, I said, my voice cool and even. I will not be submitting these receipts to the court. I turned and walked toward the door. I did not promise I wouldn't send them to Human Resources. I only promised I wouldn't use them in the divorce. He had negotiated for the silence of the courtroom, forgetting that the Court of Corporate Policy has its own jurisdiction. As the door clicked shut behind me, I felt a weight lift. He thought he had bought his safety. He had no idea that by signing that document, he had just admitted to the misconduct in writing. He had just handed me the verified proof I needed for the next step. The chess match in this room was over, but the war was just moving to a new battlefield. The ink on the divorce settlement was barely dry when I initiated the final phase of my plan. Caleb believed that his signature on the asset division agreement had bought him immunity. He thought that by giving me 60% of our savings and agreeing to sell the house, he had purchased a fortress of silence around his career. He was mistaken. He had only purchased silence within the family court system. I had never promised to protect him from the corporate bylaws he had violated. I sat in my car in the parking lot of the lawyer's office and opened my laptop. It was time to push the first domino. I opened a draft email I had written 3 days ago. The recipient was Elaine Booker, the Director of Human Resources at Brightline Strategies. The subject line was purposefully bland, formal inquiry regarding corporate expense irregularities. I did not write like an angry ex-wife. I wrote like a concerned citizen and a shareholder of the truth. I attached the timeline Grant had built. I attached the photos of the receipts where client lunches occurred at the exact same time Caleb was checked into a hotel room with Lena Ward. I attached the proof that these trips coincided with dates he claimed to be out of town on business. Ms. Booker. The email read, I am bringing to your attention discrepancies regarding the use of company funds by Mr. Caleb Merritt. Attached are documented instances where reimbursement requests for client development appear to conflict with personal activities involving another employee. Ms. Lena Ward. I hit send. 30 seconds later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Marcus. Sent. I attached the email draft where she discussed hiding assets. Good luck. We had fired from 2 different angles. I targeted the money. Marcus targeted the ethics. It was a pincer movement, and Brightline Strategies was caught in the middle. The weekend passed in a heavy, suffocating silence. I spent it packing boxes, labeling each one with a thick black marker. Kitchen, master bedroom, donate. I was dismantling the physical evidence of our marriage while the Brightline HR department was dismantling the professional existence of my husband. On Monday morning, the machine began to turn. Elaine Booker replied at 9 a.m. Her email was terse and professional. Ms. Moore, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We take allegations of financial misconduct and policy violations very seriously. An internal investigation has been opened effective immediately. We may contact you for further verification of the submitted timestamps. I did not reply. I did not need to. The evidence spoke for itself. At 2 p.m, Grant called me. He was parked across the street from the Brightline building, drinking coffee and watching the glass doors of the lobby. Showtime, Grant said, his voice crackling slightly over the car speaker. Security just went up to the 4th floor. 2 guards. I stopped packing and sat on the floor, the tape gun heavy in my hand. Tell me. They brought Caleb down first, Grant reported. He did not look arrogant today. Brooklyn. He looked like he was going to be sick. He was not in handcuffs, but he might as well have been. 1 guard in front, 1 behind. They marched him straight to the elevators that lead to the administrative suite. And Lena, I asked. 10 minutes later, Grant said. She looked terrified. She was trying to talk to the guard, waving her hands. But he was stone-faced. They are in the interrogation room now, or whatever the corporate equivalent is. I could imagine it. The fluorescent lights, the folder on the table, the quiet, deadly voice of Elaine Booker asking them to explain why a client dinner for the Quartermain account took place at a romantic resort 3 hours away from the client's headquarters. An hour later, Grant updated me again. They are leaving, separately. Caleb just walked out. He is carrying a box. He is not walking fast. He is stumbling. He looks like he took a physical beating. He's sitting on the bench outside the building, just staring at the traffic. My phone began to ring. The screen flashed Caleb. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but I needed to hear it. I needed to confirm the hit. I swiped right. You want me dead, Caleb screamed. There was no preamble, no greeting, just raw, unhinged fury. Is that it? You want me to starve. You want me on the street. I want you to be an adult. Caleb, I said, my voice calm against his hysteria. They suspended me, he yelled, his voice breaking. Pending an investigation. Do you know what that means? They pulled my access. They took my laptop. They escorted me out like a criminal in front of my entire team. I gave you the house money. I gave you everything you asked for. You gave me what was legally mine. I corrected him. And the company is reclaiming what you stole from them. I did not make you swipe that corporate card. Caleb, I did not make you write client lunch on a receipt for a date with your mistress. You did that. You felt entitled to other people's money. First mine, then theirs. I will fix this, he snarled, though the threat was empty. I will tell them you are crazy. I will tell them... You will tell them nothing, I interrupted. Because they have the receipts, and they have the email Lena wrote about hiding assets. Marcus sent that one. You are not fighting me anymore. You are fighting a forensic accounting team. Brooklyn, please. His voice dropped, swinging wildly from rage to begging. Call them. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. If I lose this job, I cannot pay the settlement. I cannot pay the mortgage. Then I guess the house sells faster, I said. Goodbye, Caleb. I pressed the red button and immediately blocked the number. I blocked his email. I blocked his social media. The silence that followed was not empty. It was heavy with satisfaction. Marcus texted me later that evening. The fallout had reached his home. She is losing her mind, Marcus wrote. She called Caleb in front of me. She was screaming that he promised they were safe. She said he told her the wife was handled. She is trying to blame it all on him now. She told me she was pressured into it by her superior. The rats are eating each other. Did you file, I asked? This morning, Marcus replied. Irreconcilable differences. And I gave my lawyer the evidence of her embezzlement to ensure I do not get saddled with her potential restitution debt. I am out. Brooklyn, I am finally out. I felt a surge of relief for him. Marcus was a good man who had been dragged into a bad story. At least he was writing his own ending now. 2 days later, the final twist arrived. It did not come from Caleb or Grant. It came from Elaine Booker. She called me directly. Her tone was no longer just professional. It was grave. Ms. Moore, I am calling to inform you that our investigation has concluded, and employment for both parties has been terminated for cause, she said. Thank you for letting me know, I said. I assume that concludes my involvement. Actually, Elaine paused, and I could hear the rustle of papers on her end. There is one more thing. While verifying the timeline you provided, our audit team discovered something that goes beyond simple expense fraud. It appears Mr. Merritt and Ms. Ward were not just falsifying receipts. I frowned, gripping the phone tighter. What do you mean? We found a pattern of bid rigging, Elaine said. Mr. Merritt was the lead on the Quartermain contract. It seems he was steering subcontracts to a vendor that, well, let us just say the vendor had a direct financial link to Ms. Ward's brother. They were taking kickbacks in exchange for approving inflated invoices. The expense fraud was just the tip of the iceberg. They were compromising the integrity of a multi-million-dollar contract. I sat frozen on my living room floor. I had thought Caleb was just a cheater and a petty thief. I had underestimated his capacity for corruption. He hadn't just risked his marriage for this affair. He had risked prison. We are preparing a legal case to recover the funds, Elaine continued, and we may be referring the matter to the district attorney for criminal prosecution regarding the kickbacks. I wanted you to know, strictly off the record, that your tip didn't just save us a few $1,000s in room service bills. You likely saved the company from a massive liability lawsuit. I see, I whispered. You will not hear from him for a long time. Ms. Moore, Elaine said, her voice softening slightly. Brightline Strategies has a very aggressive legal team. He is going to be very busy. I hung up the phone. Outside, the sun was setting over Cincinnati, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and angry orange. I looked at the boxes stacked against the wall. I had come to this city to build things. Caleb had come to take things. I had won. I had my dignity. I had my settlement. And I had the truth. But as I sat there in the fading light, I realized the victory wasn't in the money or the revenge. The victory was that I had seen the structural failure before the whole building collapsed on top of me. I had walked out the side door, just as the roof caved in on Caleb Merritt, and now he was buried under the weight of his own design. The repercussions of the investigation hit with the force of a demolition ball, but Caleb refused to go down quietly. A man who has lost his reputation has nothing left to lose, and that makes him dangerous. 3 days after Elaine Booker called me, I was sitting in my glass-walled office at Cresthaven Development Studio, reviewing the schematics for a new mixed-use complex in Over the Rhine. The morning had been peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos of the previous week. Then, I saw movement in the lobby. Caleb was storming past the reception desk. He looked manic. His tie was missing. His shirt collar was unbuttoned, and he had the frantic energy of a cornered animal. He was shouting my name before he even reached the glass doors of my workspace. "You did this!" he screamed, his voice echoing off the polished concrete floors. "You ruined my life, Brooklyn." my assistant. A young woman named Sarah, who usually handled scheduling conflicts with polite smiles, stood up in alarm. I did not move from my chair. I did not flinch. I simply pressed the intercom button on my desk phone. "Security to the main office, please," I said, my voice steady. "We have an intruder." Caleb slammed his hand against the glass wall. "Intruder. I am your husband. You sent those receipts. You got me fired. Do you have any idea what you have done? They are talking about criminal charges." "I warned you," I said, my voice muffled by the soundproof glass, but audible enough for him to hear. "I told you to take the settlement and walk away. You chose to threaten me." Two security guards, burly men I had hired specifically for site safety, appeared behind him. One grabbed Caleb by the arm. Caleb thrashed, trying to shake him off, looking wild-eyed and pathetic. "She is crazy," Caleb yelled to the entire office, to my colleagues who were now peering out of their cubicles. "She is vindictive. She made it all up because I wanted a divorce. She is lying." I stood up then. I walked to the glass door and opened it. I looked him dead in the eye. "The forensic audit was not made up, Caleb," I said, loud enough for my team to hear. "And neither were the kickbacks. Get out of my building." He went limp then, the fight draining out of him as the reality of his public humiliation set in. The guards dragged him out, his shoes squeaking against the floor, leaving a silence in the office that was heavy and absolute. I turned to my team. "Back to work, everyone. Just a minor disturbance." But the disturbance did not end at the door. By that evening, my phone began to buzz with messages from mutual acquaintances. Caleb was on a rampage. He was calling everyone we knew college friends, neighbors, former colleagues, telling them I was a scorned woman who had fabricated evidence to destroy his career. He painted himself as the victim of a vindictive wife who couldn't handle rejection. I did not post a status update. I did not write a blog. I controlled the narrative the same way I controlled a project budget, with minimalism and accuracy. When people reached out, I gave them a single sentence. Caleb was terminated for financial misconduct and is currently under investigation for fraud. I did not mention the affair. I did not mention Leona. I let the word fraud do the heavy lifting. In our social circle, infidelity is a scandal, but financial crime is a death sentence. The rumors stopped within 48 hours. No one wants to associate with a liability. The next attack came through the lawyers. Marianne called me on Thursday morning. "Arthur Sterling just filed a motion to delay the asset transfer," she said, sounding annoyed. "Caleb is claiming financial hardship. He says that since he has lost his income, he cannot afford to liquidate the funds or refinance any debts. He wants to pause the settlement execution for 6 months. He is trying to buy time," I said. "He wants to hide the money before he has to pay me." "Exactly," Marianne agreed. "But he made a tactical error. He signed the agreement before he was fired. The terms are binding regardless of his employment status, and I am going to attach the police report from the incident at your office to our response. We will argue that his financial hardship is a direct result of his own criminal behavior, and that his erratic conduct makes him a flight risk for the assets. We are not pausing, we are accelerating." While Caleb was fighting me, his alliance with Leona was crumbling into dust. Marcus updated me later that week. The silence in his house had been replaced by screaming matches. She asked me to take her back. Marcus texted me. She said Caleb manipulated her. She said she was a victim of his power dynamic. "What did you say?" I asked. "I handed her the divorce papers," Marcus replied, and I told her that her name is on the receipts too. Grant, my investigator, was still keeping a loose eye on them, mostly to ensure my safety after the office incident. He caught the final fracture on camera. It was Friday afternoon. Caleb and Leona met in the parking lot of a grocery store, neutral ground for two people who were now unwelcome in their own homes and offices. Grant described the scene to me over the phone. "It was ugly. Brooklyn," Grant said. "They were not hiding anymore. Caleb was waving his arms, shouting at her. Leona was crying, but it looked like angry tears. I managed to catch audio with the directional mic. "Play it," I said. The recording was grainy, accompanied by the wind, but the voices were clear. "You said you had a plan," Lena shrieked. "You said you prepared an exit route. You said the money was safe." "Shut up," Caleb's voice roared back. "The accounts are frozen. Lena, the company locked everything. I cannot get to it." "You lied to me," she yelled. "You dragged me into this, and now I have nothing. Marcus kicked me out. I am going to jail because of you." "You are going to jail because you got greedy," Caleb shouted. "Don't put this all on me." I told Grant to stop the tape. "That is enough," I said. "Send a copy to Elaine Booker at Brightline. It confirms they were conspiring to hide assets. It might help the company recover their losses." "Consider it done," Grant said. I thought I had seen the bottom of Caleb's desperation. But the twist came on Saturday morning. I was collecting the mail from my rental box when I saw a letter from our mortgage lender. It was addressed to both of us, but marked urgent. I tore it open. It was a notification of a loan denial. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Merritt, we regret to inform you that your application for an emergency bridge loan using the property at 42 Oak Lane as collateral has been declined due to a flag on the title." My hands went cold. The date on the application was 3 days ago. Caleb had tried to take out a loan against the house after signing the settlement agreement, after being fired, and after the court injunction was in place. He had likely forged my digital signature or tried to bypass the consent requirement by claiming emergency hardship. He was trying to drain the equity one last time, to take the cash and run before the house could be sold, leaving me with the debt. If Marianne had not filed that immediate dispute and flagged the title with the county clerk the day of the mediation, the bank might have processed it. He would have stolen $100,000 right out from under me, leaving me to fight a bank for a house I was already trying to sell. I walked back into my apartment and placed the letter on the table. It was not just a rejection letter. It was the final piece of evidence that Caleb Merritt was not just a bad husband. He was a predator. I picked up my phone and called Marianne. "I just got a letter from the bank," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and relief. "He tried to mortgage the house again, 3 days ago." "That idiot," Marianne breathed. "He just violated the court order. That is contempt of court. And since it involves bank fraud, we can now request an immediate ex parte hearing to strip him of all decision-making power regarding the property sale. He just handed us the keys. Brooklyn, he is done. Get the hearing," I said. "I want him out of the house. I want the locks changed, and I want the sale fast-tracked." "I am filing it now," she said. I hung up. Caleb had tried to play one last card, but he had forgotten that I was the one who designed the deck. He was flailing in the water, trying to pull me down with him, but he had forgotten that I had already climbed into the lifeboat. All he had done was signal the sharks. The end of a marriage does not sound like a gavel banging against a wooden block. It sounds like the quiet whir of a printer spitting out the final addendum to a termination contract. The conclusion from Brightline Strategies was swift and absolute. Elaine Booker did not send a courier. She sent a secure digital notification that Caleb Merritt and Lena Ward had been terminated for cause effective immediately. The official reason cited was a violation of the corporate code of conduct regarding fraternization and the gross misappropriation of company funds. Caleb tried to fight it. He attempted to file a wrongful termination suit, claiming that he was being targeted due to a personal vendetta orchestrated by his estranged wife. He sat in Arthur Sterling's office, loudly insisting that the timeline of the receipts was circumstantial and that I had doctored the evidence. But facts are stubborn things. When his lawyer cross-referenced the GPS data from Caleb's company phone with the timestamps on the expense reports, the defense collapsed. He had claimed to be at a client site in Cleveland at the exact moment his phone was pinging off a tower near a luxury spa in Hocking Hills. Arthur Sterling, looking more exhausted than ever, finally gave him the only advice that mattered. He told Caleb to stop digging before the company decided to escalate the civil suit into criminal charges for fraud. Caleb went silent. The fight had left him. The final hearing for the divorce was a formality. I did not even look at him. I looked at the judge, a stern woman who reviewed the forensic accounting with a critical eye. because of the dissipation of assets, the money he had spent on hotels, dinners, and gifts for Lena. The judge ruled in my favor on the division of the remaining property. The house in Hyde Park was already in escrow, sold to a nice young couple who had no idea their dream home had been a battlefield. I was awarded 70% of the proceeds. The extra 20% was not a gift. It was reimbursement for the funds Caleb had stolen from our future to pay for his betrayal. Just as the judge was about to finalize the decree, the door to the courtroom opened. It was Marcus Ward. He was not there to cause a scene. He walked calmly to the bailiff and handed over a sealed envelope. My lawyer, Marianne, requested permission to approach the bench. Inside the envelope were the originals of the receipts Lena had hidden in her car, along with printed text messages from a burner phone she had kept secret even from Marcus until the end. These messages proved that Caleb wasn't just a participant in the affair. He was the architect. The texts showed Caleb instructing Lena on how to falsify the expense reports. They showed him telling her to delete messages. They showed him mocking me for working late while he was out spending our money. But the final twist, the one that truly severed Caleb's last grasp on dignity, came from Lena herself. In a desperate bid to save her own reputation, and perhaps avoid being sued by Brightline for the full amount of the embezzlement, Lena had turned on him. Included in Marcus's file was a forwarded email chain she had sent to the HR department the night before. In the email, Lena wrote, "I was acting under the direct supervision of my superior, Mr. Merritt. He assured me that these expenses were approved within the budget of the Quartermain project. He instructed me not to disclose these details to HR. She threw him to the wolves to save herself." I looked at Caleb. He was reading the transcript of the email that his lawyer had just handed him. His face was a mask of pure shock. He had lost his wife, his job, his house, and now, his mistress had painted him as the sole villain to save her own skin. He had nothing. He was the king of a kingdom of ash. The gavel finally banged. Divorce granted. 2 weeks later, I was packing the last box in my rental apartment when my phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize, with a Wisconsin area code. "Ms. Moore," a voice said. "My name is David Thorne. I represent a commercial development firm in Madison. We have seen your portfolio, specifically your work on the Over-the-Rhine mixed-use complex. We have a project breaking ground in the spring, a massive waterfront revitalization. We need a project lead who understands how to build on difficult terrain." I walked to the window. Madison, Wisconsin. It was 600 miles away. It was cold. It was far from Cincinnati, far from the Halston room, and far from the memories of a life that no longer fit me. "I am listening," I said. "The position starts in 30 days, David said. "Full relocation package included." "I can start in 2 weeks, I replied. The final scene of this chapter of my life did not happen in a courtroom or a boardroom. It happened in a small bistro near the airport, an hour before my flight to Madison. I was sitting alone, enjoying a glass of white wine and a book. My phone was on the table, face up. A text message appeared. The number was unsaved. But I knew who it was. Caleb had likely bought a prepaid phone since I had blocked his main line. "Brooklyn, I am sorry. I ruined everything. I am staying at my sister's place. I miss you. Can we just talk, please?" I looked at the words. 6 months ago. That text might have made me cry. 3 months ago. It might have made me angry. Now I felt absolutely nothing. It was like reading a text from a wrong number. He was sorry because he was broken. He missed me because he had no one left to manipulate. He wanted to talk because the silence of his own making was too loud to bear. I did not reply with a photo this time. I did not reply with a witty comeback. I simply swiped left and hit delete. Then, I blocked the number. I finished my wine, left a generous tip for the server, and picked up my carry-on bag. The automatic doors of the terminal parted for me, and I walked through them without looking back. The best revenge wasn't ruining his life. He had done that himself. The best revenge was realizing that he no longer even warranted a footnote in mine. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. so please drop a comment below and let's chat. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the Leona Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach even more people. Your support means the world to me.